Have you ever wondered whether the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment, and acted from that place?
Welcome to the Conscious Action podcast with your hosts Brian Berneman and Kayla Greenville, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world.
We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers.
From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure for this episode to be joined all the way from Colombia by Hector Aristizábal. And first of all, Hector, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and to share what you already do, that I find that is amazing, and I know your work. But a lot of people, especially perhaps on this side of the world, haven't heard about you and what you do. So I would love for you to share with our listeners, who is Hector?
Thank you, Brian. Well, I wish I knew. It's a work in progress, as we all are. But I guess the fastest way to come to what the way I'm living right now and what is interesting me the most. I grew up in Colombia, and like many people here, I had to deal with the realities of a country that has been affected by an ongoing war of more than 60 years, war between the government, the guerrilla groups, the paramilitary death squads, the mafia. And as a young person living in a very poor neighborhood, I was constantly bombarded by all of these forces and these organizations that wanted to recruit the young people. And in my case, I always said that I was saved by theater, because theater was a practice that allowed me to not only imagine a different world to the world that I was living in, but also allowed me to develop as a person. I was also lucky that I was able to enter the university, which was almost like a lotto here. Most people never go to university, especially if they don't have economic resources. And I studied psychology because I was very interested in pain, my own pain and the pain that I witnessed around me. But then like many other people, I was tortured by the Colombian government just for being a student. And that really marked a lot of what has been my life and my interests and my struggles ever since. In 1989, I was forced into exile. I was tired of burying very close friends, amazing people, university professors, intellectuals, artists, not even leftist people. There was a dirty war that was killing many people. And being from Argentina, you understand what many of the countries here in the south of America have suffered, and South and Central America, with dictatorships and very oppressive regimes. So I ended up in the United States, which was the last place in the world I imagined going. But then very soon when I was there, not only I met the woman who became my wife and the mother of my two children, but also I was able to recognize that governments are very different to the people that inhabit the countries. And my entire life, I have combined theater, my interest in the arts, with psychology, which was my training at the university. And then in the last years, I have included the work with deep ecology, and especially under the influence of Joanna Macy and the work that reconnects, and also the work of John Croft and Vivian, his wife, with Dragon Dreaming, and a lot of other things, Theory U. So I'm constantly searching and exploring new ways of doing the work that I love to do with communities. So I when I left the country when I was 28. I lived out of the country for 28 years. It just happened like that. And 4 years ago, because of the peace process here in Colombia, I decided to return to Colombia. That's why we're here. I'm here right now. And it has allowed me to combine all the different experiences that I gather in many other places as I learn and share what I was learning with other people. And as I also went through my own healing process. So that's more or less some of the things, the highlights of what interests me right now.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm really interested, Hector, if you would be able to share a little bit more on some of these topics that you mentioned, because I think that they are really important. Yet I think that a lot of people are not that familiar with some of these topics. And the first one that I want to ask you to explore a little bit more is the deep ecology, and how what do you understand it to be, and how are you including that in your work?
Great, thank you. Look, I think I lived for 50 years in an anthropocentric world, a world that was centered around human beings. And even though I always respected and admire and enjoy nature, and I don't think I have ever done anything consciously to harm nature, I was not conscious of the deep connection that we all have with nature because we are nature. So somehow I was trapped in that separation that began 600 years ago in a very radical way, that separation between humans and nature, culture and nature, between men and women, between the left brain and the right brain, or logos and mythos, or logos and intuition, etc. I mean, and even though I feel that I dedicated my life to the well-being and searching for ways of healing, only in the last 10 years, thanks to meeting Joanna Macy and doing trainings with her, but mostly, and also working with ayahuasca and other medicinal plants, my own experience with meditation and vipassana and connecting to my body. Although I always work with my body, which is our nature, is what we used to incarnate as souls or as spirits. But it has not been as clear as it has become in the last 5 years since I returned to my country, my native country. And then I realized that somehow for many years, I was like an uprooted tree flying all over the world. And yes, doing, I hope, very nice things and working with people in wonderful ways, using mostly theater and the arts. But since I returned here, first of all, I moved away from the city. I moved to a rural area. I started planting my own food. I started planting flowers and trees. Now I have a dog and a cat, and the dog we got, but the cat just adopted us. It just appeared here one day. And all of this has completely transformed me. I have looked for many ways of healing, which fortunately, there are many different ways. Because what heals you not necessarily is what resonates with my soul, and vice versa. But nature is the place where we all come from, and nature is the place that we are all going to go back to. Nature is what gives us everything that we have. Even the atomic bomb comes from nature. All the chemicals, all the vaccines, all come from nature. But the awareness of that connection is very new for me in the level that it is right now. And I could say that, yes, meeting the work of Joanna Macy, and then also the work of the School of Lost Borders. This is a school in Northern California that does rituals of initiation, the bare bones of initiation, they call it, using some Lakota tradition and using they don't call it the vision quest because they respect that this is a tradition from the Native Americans, but is a vision quest. Is through being in nature by yourself, being in something that is bigger than us, and being without food, only with 1 gallon of water per day. As they said, in 3 days, all your civilization disappears. Mm-hmm. And when you have been fasting for 4 days, really you feel, and then you are in the desert, in the Injo Mountains, and you can see the canopy of stars above you, trillions of stars. Mm-hmm. And after the third night that you are mesmerized by that beauty, you start seeing the star that has your name, as they say in New Zealand, that there is a star that has your name, that when we die, we become stars. I remember that. And so this work, the way I'm living right now, and then the work that I have been doing with a friend called Elena Ter Ellen, who was teaching deep ecology here in Colombia, the work that reconnects. And when we met, we started combining her work with the work that I did with theater and the work that I was developing with rituals. And we started doing a work for the Truth Commission, at the service of the Truth Commission. So now we take groups of people into the womb of the mother. And we take them there to reconnect to who we are, to reconnect to our own souls, to reconnect to the other that we consider as the enemy or the nemesis. And nature is the big teacher, and is the big healer. And so the more and more I do this work, the more I plant trees and I plant my own food, which the pandemic allows me to have the time to do. It's amazing that as humanity, we had been so disconnected that we are now living the Anthropocene, the possibility of the sixth big extinction. And now, because of the actions that humans have been doing for the last only in the last 60 years, my age, we had destroyed more than half of the beings that have taken millions of years for the earth to produce.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. That's so important. And, I think that for me, this has been true, that I grew up in Buenos Aires. I grew up in a city. Yes. I didn't have that connection with nature. There wasn't that much nature around me. So I didn't develop, when I was young, that connection. And for me, and I think that based on my own understandings and all of the practices and traditions that I've been learning through the years, how our disconnection is at the root of most of the issues that we have as people and as civilization. And when we start to reconnect, both, as you're saying, to our nature, which is our mother, which is us, and then to each other, and then we start to connect. And then once we start to connect, then it's easier to understand what are the actions and the behaviors that we can take so that actually everything is balanced, because that disconnection has created this place of imbalance in all levels of our experience as humans. And that is so important to be able to come back to those notions of it is us, and how are we going to connect with it, and how are we going to see and, in a sense, heal our relationship and heal our own nature, our own bodies, and our connection with the earth. And I would love for you to share a little bit more, Hector, on this, that is that first aspect of healing ourselves, because I know a lot of people that I'm working with, and lately I've been using a lot the somatic practices that I use, and some family constellations work for healing deep traumas. What has been your experience with using your vehicle of your body for healing, and how can people use that?
Well, first of all, I resonate with everything you just mentioned, and my work has been mostly through the body. I work with theater, and theater is a three-dimensional art form in which we use the body and we use our voice to express whatever it is that we need to express. For many years, I had done plays with people who had never seen a play in their life, who didn't know that the word theater existed. But we are all constantly acting. We're all constantly performing. We're all constantly trying to become who we are as parents, as psychologists, in our case, as actors, as politicians, as priests, as anything you can look at is a performance. We're all constantly, and it's done through our bodies. But it is amazing how we can live our lives so separated from ourselves. And for example, in the academic world, I had met people who know a lot about a topic, but they look like heads talking about the topic. And the way I realized that is when I went to conferences where they were mostly promoting the latest book. I was fascinated for the first 10 minutes of how much this person knew about whatever. But then I realized that it failed to connect me at the soul level. It failed to connect me at the body level. It failed to create community. It was just a head talking. The way we are suffering right now with this new virus, the coronavirus, we are made out of viruses. Viruses are the way our system is upgraded to be able to deal with all the changes that we are producing on the soil. But as we have ruined the soil of the earth with chemicals and this mass production and this monocultivation and this over work with cows and cattle, etc., we have done the same to our own organism, to our own guts. And that therefore we are incredibly weak, and our immune system has been compromised in such a way that so many people had been so horribly affected by COVID-19. So yes, is disconnect that we are all suffering now also with technology, the way everybody is so enraptured by the dopamine that is created by the sounds on this little sound system called the cell phones, and then you can see people even talking to their beloved ones, connected with them through the phone, and all of these disconnections, of course, have also led us to treat each other in the most violent ways, and to treat the mother earth in the most violent ways, so violently that, as we mentioned, we are about to destroy. All the ecosystems are collapsing, and also all the human systems that we have created are collapsing, not only because of war, but even in places that are not officially at war. There is a war between the humans and the beings other than human, because we are denying their lives. And we with ourselves. So you see the anguish, the depression, the suicide, the homicide, all the pandemics of all kinds of diseases, mental and physical diseases, are just signs of this disconnection. So the paradox is that if we look around, even in a city, you can hear birds, even in a city, and you see also the connection of people to their pets. Sometimes there is a lot of love and care there, because there is this need, this very strong need for us to return to who we are. And I have a piece of land, and I'm happy to be in Colombia where I can afford it. I could never afford it in most other places, but it doesn't matter how much land you have, even if it is a pot in your apartment with a plant. That plant is giving you a lot of love. And if we pay attention, through that, there is a conversation that is constantly happening. Nature is constantly reflecting to us the ways we're living. But we have stopped listening, because there is so much noise in our heads. There is so much information constantly bombarding us that we don't have time to connect to each other, and to connect to nature, and to connect to the beings other than human, that are constantly there. Now I am awakened every day by an original symphony of, I have more than 15 different types of birds. And all I do is put plantain every day. And they come and they serenade me and they say, hey, hello, we're waiting here, you know. But now I'm planting trees that will have the fruits that they need, so they don't need to depend on me. But it's this dialogue that is now, I am the most fortunate. I miss when I travel, I miss this, but I hear the birds somewhere else. Anyway, it's always around us. It's always talking to us. And humans used to know that language, but we had forgotten. The good thing is that it is in our bones. Through ritual and through some plants, some medicinal plants, through meditation, just through silence, we can start listening again and we can start reconnecting. And I don't know a more powerful way of healing. I mean, it's not the only one, but it's a very powerful one.
Yes, that's so beautiful. And I know, like, I'm privileged enough to be able to live in a house where there's a beautiful garden with a lot of fruit trees, and we have a veg garden, and every day as well the birds are just out here and I can hear the birds. And some days, especially now, since being able to teach online from home instead of going to different places, on all of my meditation sessions, like people like a lot of times mention that they can hear the birds on the background, and it's so beautiful that they can notice it even if they are coming to my classes from somewhere else, and that those birds are there. And there is so much power in listening and being able to slow down or completely stop and being able to open to the beauty that is all around us. Because I think that is something that I know I missed for a long time, that it was not being able to notice how amazing and beautiful it is all around me. And I don't need to look, I don't need to go to a special place, which might have a different kind of energy or a different kind of beauty. But as you said, like anywhere in the city, in an apartment, just a plant or an animal, it can bring that for us. And I think that is so beautiful and so necessary to be able to reconnect in that way. And I wanted to ask you, Hector, you mentioned at the very beginning something that I think that is really important, that I want to understand what has been your process through this. You mentioned being younger in Colombia and being kidnapped and being tortured, and going through not only personally through that, but your community and your family going through all of those really challenging times. How were you able to work through that, to be able to understand, how can you move past that, or how can you understand it?
Well, I feel that every human being is going to go through ordeals and difficult ordeals. For some people, are very clear. Some people are raped. Some people are molested by the people who were supposed to care for them and to love them. And some people go through horrible natural disasters that all of a sudden take away everything you knew, home and humans. Some people are born in countries at war, like Colombia, like Palestine, like many, many other places in the world. It doesn't matter what happens to you. Our souls are able to resignify that, are able to overcome these things. And we are given this gift because of evolution to be able to resignify whatever happens to us in order to create meaning out of it. The image that I have been using a lot lately, and we learned this with this project called Reconectando, which I invite you, the people who are listening to us to go into our website. There are many beautiful videos and photographs and narratives there of the experiences that we have with the people that we're working with, mostly ex-combatants who had gone through horrible things, their victims who also had gone through terrible things, rapes, massacres, kidnappings, torture, etc. So all of us, and for some people, it doesn't have to be so dramatic. For some people, is my father has always been absent. My mother suffered of schizophrenia or some kind of depression or some kind of mental illness, or or there was physical or psychological violence in my environment. We have to overcome that, and there are many ways. I have tried therapy. I am a therapist, so I believe that can be very helpful for many people. Theater has been an incredible vehicle for me, a form that has allowed me to transform my experiences into plays, into poems, into narratives, into stories, into improvisations. The latest was a play that is called Night Wind that people can see on the YouTube, in which I tell my story of torture, and especially I talk about the kidnapped, torture, and killing of my own brother and many other friends, but my own brother. And when I did the play, I became the author of my life, not the victim of my life. So I was able to own that experience and to find the meaning. And the meaning was mostly to be able to tell the story to other people in order to invite them to think about why societies torture people, because it's not to gather intelligence, it's to send a message of terror, it's to tell people not to do or not to be who they are, because otherwise they will be kidnapped, disappear, tortured, killed, etc. And so that's one of the things. I mean, it's not the main thing. I have gone through many other very difficult moments. I lost my youngest brother to AIDS, and so many people suffer with AIDS. I started working with people with AIDS and HIV in the United States. I have worked with young people in prisons in the United States, or in the prison of being gang members, trying to be initiated into life, but they were being initiated into a cult of death, not a cult of life. But they were trying to follow that archetypal need that we all have to be seen by others, to be blessed by others. And the image that we have been using lately is the image of the mycelium. The mycelium is how the roots of all the trees and all the living organisms communicate, is the internet of the jungle, is the way they tell each other what is going on. If there is a pest that is coming, or there is a drought that is happening. But what we do in the work of psychology and healing is that we are the mycelium of the mystery of the soul, that we are the mycelium that comes in those places where we had been terribly wounded, and we create meaning out of it. Because I feel that that's the beautiful gift that we have as humans. I don't know if animals can do that. I know that if an animal breaks a bone, there is no way they will be able to ever heal it in a proper way. If an animal loses their mother, or a mother loses their children, which we always do, we separate cows from their little calves and etc. constantly. What happens to them? But to humans, we know is very difficult. It's very powerful when we go through these experiences. But also we have this incredible capacity of resilience and transformation. And we, like butterflies, I was just in this event, and we saw these worms eat this tree during the 5 days that we were there. It was unbelievable. And they grew so much, almost in front of our eyes. I was not there long enough to see them transform into butterflies, but I was feeling that was an incredible metaphor to the work that we were doing with these young people who were had been very involved with the national strike here in Colombia. And many of them had been killed, many of them had lost their eyes. And we were trying to help them process that difficult ordeal and see what new meanings can come out of it, so they don't stay stuck in these moments that can be very traumatic. And most of us had been traumatized by these experiences because we don't know how to metabolize them. So healing is about making the past, the events in the past, fully present and integrating them in the present. So psychotherapy can help you do that. A beautiful work with medicinal plants can help you do that. And right now, there are lots of wonderful ways and a powerful conversation happening in the world with the trauma, with the work that the Pocket Project is doing in making us aware of the collective trauma, this matrix of trauma that most of us have been born into, and looking at ways of collective healing. And we have access to so many things, meditation and yoga and vipassana, but anyway, so many different forms that can help all of us.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. I was just feeling, whilst you were sharing, just feeling your energy as you were sharing. I could feel the process of transformation, and the thing that I think was so important that really resonated in my body was when you were sharing about owning and taking responsibility for, this is what happened. How can I process it? How can I integrate it? And how can I reimagine it so I can move with this and from this, so that it's not a blockage in my energy system, or still a trauma that is preventing me from living life. And I think that is something that through the past few years that I've been working a lot on the family constellation space, my teacher always used to say, you're either choosing life or you're choosing death. And I think that's something that you mentioned before, and with the gangs, like how are we choosing to be alive and to use this life and to see the preciousness of this human life, to be able to live fully and to be able to be in the moment and embodying really what it is that is. And I think that is so important. I think that, Hector, like one of the things for me that I use a lot, and I would love for you to share a little bit more on how you use it and how does it look like, the rituals. Because I think that a lot of people, when I have done some rituals with the groups, and some people have some kind of aversion to rituals. I think it's just because perhaps they don't understand where it comes from or what it is. Can you share a little bit more? What is a ritual and what is the space that it creates?
Well, yeah, that's a complex question, but I will give you like some simple ideas that work for me. First of all, ritual is the oldest way that humanity has used to heal. I was just with these 50 young people, again, that many of them are being under death threats because of the confrontations they have been having with the police here in Colombia. And one night they just decided to sit around the fire. And each one of them, in a very ceremonial, beautiful way, was talking about themselves and talking about their friends who had been killed and how they missed them. And many of us were crying listening to the stories. And then one will come with a joke, and another one broke into a rap thing to introduce himself. And beauty just kept coming out, inspired by the fire. That is the oldest form of ritual. Is we sit around the fire, which symbolizes the fire inside of us, and we relate to each other, relatare. We tell each other our stories. What I had discovered in my work is that, because for me, ritual was something very religious and connected to a ritual that was never a ritual, which was my religious upbringing with Catholicism, which is an empty rite, in my opinion. It's a repetitious thing. It's the opposite of ritual. Ritual is a completely creative event because spirit shows up in the middle of it. And when it shows, it breaks everything. So the preparation of a ritual is not for it to be perfect. It's not for it to be as the last one. No, it's for it to break. And so I was working a lot with people when I was doing Theater of the Oppressed, the work of Augusto Boal, and I was inviting communities and groups and organizations to create plays about the things that they didn't know how to resolve. And when we were in that process, people would tell horrible stories about the people who have died, about all the things they had to live when they were forced into exile or into migrating from Syria or from any country in Africa because of the poverty or because of the political violence, whatever the cause. But the incredible losses. In war, you don't have the time to mourn the people who had died. And sometimes you don't even have the time to bury them. So what we do is we bury them in our bodies. So I was listening to these stories, and yes, we will create a beautiful play. We will perform the play to the community. The community will intervene in the play, trying to find alternatives to the conflicts that we were presenting. But all of these people that had been named were there. And I kept saying, what do we do with that? Not to resolve it, but to dissolve it in another substance. So sometimes I will teach them a song from Burkina Faso that I learned from Alidoma Somé, a shaman from Burkina Faso, from the Dagara tribe that I learned a lot from, or from Michael Mead, a storyteller here in the United States that had been a mentor to me for many years. But yet I always felt that we needed something else. And sometimes it's very simple. It's like having candles and telling people, look, we're going to lit a candle for that person who is no longer here. And we are going to think of them. And then we create a shrine by putting the candles in over a tree or a different formation. Or sometimes we are going to bury them. We're going to write their names in a leaf, in a dry leaf, and give them to the fire, or take them to a body of water and see it floating down the river. In many places here in Colombia, the rivers have become places that have become like cemeteries, because many of the bodies have been thrown into the waters of the river. And people are looking for the pieces of their beloved ones, and then they find the pieces from the communities up the river, upstream, that come down. And then people bury femurs or heads or pieces of bodies. And those are rituals. Is how do we ritualize those changes? One of the things that I learned the most working with gang members is that they were trying to be initiated. And that's why all gangs have jump-in rituals. But they are not complete rituals, because they are not initiated into life. They are initiated into forms of death, you know? And when you are young, somehow a part of you needs to die, but it's not real death. It's a symbolic death. And ancient communities seem to understand that, and they develop these very sophisticated rituals. The most sophisticated rituals is when you die, and we have to say goodbye to your body, so your spirit can go to wherever it is that the community thinks you go, the person, the family thinks. So most rituals are a way to mark a big change, a big shift from one condition, I'm no longer a child, to another condition, I am becoming an adult or an elder to be. Or how to initiate elders, because if we don't initiate elders, if we don't help people understand who their life was about, they become elders. They become not wise people, they become decrepit. And it's very sad that we don't have many elders in our culture. We have a lot of old people, you know, and instead of giving their medicine to the world, they are all making lines to receiving medication, which is important too. But you know, it's so the rituals I develop are very simple, are almost like theatrical events. They have objects that are charged with meaning. They have stories. They have songs. They are very theatrical, and they always have to respond to an intention. To a difficulty of the moment, like all these people that were named that had been dead, that had not receiving proper burial, and then we buried them again. And also is rooted in something ancestral, in something that is in our bones. All of us know what a ritual is. I've seen many groups of young people design the most beautiful rituals just out of the blue, you know. a ritual like washing the feet of all the older men in the group. And I have seen those older men, in this case, people from prisons, wept when a homeboy says, I'm sorry that you had to go to prison, that no one was there for you, and I want to honor you, and let me wash your feet. And then that alone can break any armor that anyone can develop in a prison, etc. So I feel that it's not so much how you do it. The how can be as creative and sophisticated or as simple, but that it has to have a very clear intention. Yeah. And we all agree that what we're going to do now is to write the name of the loved one in this leaf. And when we put the leaf on the fire, we're going to honor their spirit. And you agree on that, then you do it. And then you add song, and then you are drumming. And at the end, you celebrate around the fire. And then things become charged with meaning. And I haven't met anyone who is not moved by a ritual. Maybe they feel uncomfortable at the beginning, but if they simply relax into it and accept the intention, magical things happen. And sometimes people can really break through in very meaningful ways.
That's so beautiful, so beautiful. I love doing rituals, and for me the same. Like for me, rituals is all about the intention around it, and to be able to come together in that space, and to have that unity within that space, and it's so incredible. I love the stories that you're sharing, because I think that they are so powerful. You're working with people that have gone through really challenging situations, and I think that it's so important as well to recognize that we're all, as you're saying, like we all go through our own things, yet some people are going through some more challenging situations. And I think that I heard one of the stories that you shared in some videos that I've seen, and I think that this is important. This is one thing that I would love for you to explore a little bit more. How can people, by having the theater or someone else opening, how can they heal this place that I think that I heard the story that you were sharing of someone that was the perpetrator and someone that was the victim, and how can they actually heal that relationship? Because in society, this is something that I see a lot and that I try to work with my clients, is getting out of that victim space. What you mentioned earlier about taking ownership and taking responsibility of things, but also not continuing the cycle of victim perpetrator and then the victim trying to become the perpetrator. How is within your work, or how have you seen this happening, that healing taking place?
So many things that you have mentioned that I feel are very important in what makes a ritual. And another very important aspect of it is the role of the witness. Is that often in ritual space, we experience things that we have not been able to experience alone. And things that, for example, in psychotherapy, although psychotherapy can save lives and can be very important, lacks that component. And the component of the group that is holding the space, the cauldron, for all of these new alchemies to happen is very important. It's people holding the containers so you can allow yourself to do something you always wanted to do, but you could not do alone because of fear, because it's so extreme, because you had to scream so much, because you are going to faint several times, and you have to know that people are going to be there to bring you back, to hold you, even when you jump into the abyss, that they will be there for you. So that component is very important. And that's the part of the collective healing. In Reconectando, we have witnessed incredible miracles. And we don't tell people you are coming here to heal. We don't offer that because no one can promise that. We don't tell people you are coming here to reconcile or to be forgiven or to ask for forgiveness or to But when we invite people to simply start by connecting to nature, by connecting to their bodies, by connecting through very simple rituals. There is a powerful ritual that is described by Joanna Macy, is the truth mandala, in which, using 4 different objects, we invite people to speak about their anger using a piece of wood, about their fear using a rock, because fear makes the heart like an armor, about their pain using dry leaves, and about their sense of being lost or uncertainty using an empty vessel, an empty container. And through that, an act of poiesis happen. People start speaking differently, because they're not now telling the story to convince someone of I don't know what. No, they are just giving a space to their anger, to their raw emotions, so they can go through that tunnel and see the light on the other side. And again, the container creates the hope for that to happen, the active hope. The hope, what is behind hope is imagination. What is behind the anger is a desire for justice. What is behind the fear is courage, is the capacity to be able to say, I am afraid. What is behind the pain is what we love, and what is behind uncertainty is the capacity to find things. So and then it's very, very rapidly, people realize that this division between the victims and the perpetrators and the saviors, that triangle that most of us have moved into for a long time, gets completely undone. Because we realize, I have known that I am a perpetrator. In my imagination, I have committed many crimes. I have taken revenge. I have killed people. I have tortured people, in my imagination, in my plays, in my poetry, so no one gets hurt. And I can process that anger. So I can now work with perpetrators, work with people who have perpetrated acts of violence. But no one stays there unless it's a very pathological human being, which there are some, and many of them usually gets into positions of power. But anyway, that's another conversation. But most of us have moved into all these places. The main problem is, especially when the saviors have not done work in themselves, they end up identifying with the victims and not allowing the victims to, as we said before, whatever happens to them, to transform it, to transmute it. And then they leave the perpetrators always as perpetrators. And it doesn't really exist. We all commit mistakes. Fortunately, not all of us kill people, not all of us rape or molest children, etc. But we have that capacity, we have that potential, and we have done it in our imagination, most of us. So we have played those roles. When in theater, for example, we can play the characters, and all actor will tell you the best character to play is the bad person, is the ugly guy, is because it allows you to explore the darkness in yourself and then come back to yourself. Psychodrama has allowed that. Family constellations allows us to do things that we don't even know where they come from. Image theater, presence in theater, allows us to put ourselves in those places, in those potential roles, in all those characters that live inside of us, that potentially can be all of us. Or at the Thich Nhat Hanh poem, I am the killer and I am the killed, and I am the hunter and I am the whatever animal that is being hunted. We are all of those things, and in these rituals, that's what people realize. But they also realize that most of the time, the story of the person who ended up committing acts of violence is also a violent story. They are also victims of other things, discrimination, of killing sometimes, or rape. Most rapists have been raped. And it's not that all people who have been raped will be rapists. That's not true. But it's very common that people are dealing with their own woundedness when they allow themselves to dehumanize somebody else. You have to be very dehumanized to dehumanize another person, or you have been trained, as most soldiers are, to become killers, to dehumanize their enemies so they can destroy not only them, but their families, their buildings, their libraries, etc., which is what in German they call it to be berserk, that you are no longer yourself. And that's when warriors came back to the village. They had to go through a process of decompression that we are not doing. And that's why most of them are killing themselves, especially in the United States. Most soldiers have killed themselves that have been killing war because they cannot live with themselves. We have a project called Soldier, and it had to do with how the soul of the soldier got lost and never came back, even if their bodies came back. Anyway, so I'm missing a lot of things, but it's the importance of receiving help from the group, from the witness, and also from people who had gone through similar things. And that's the role of the mentor, and that's the role of the elder, and that's the role of the shaman, or the person who can guide others through these difficult processes to do a regression and go back and be able to kill the person who killed your father, but then ask them afterwards, why did you do it? And see also a horrible story. So once you change that inside of you, you no longer have to continue projecting them in others, in policemen, in guerrillas, in the bad people, in Muslims, whatever the target is at the moment in the culture where you live. It's so easy to project evil outside. They say if evil could be placed outside, it will not be that evil. or in other traditions, like you have to destroy that in yourself first, or the shadow. We all have that. Anyway, so yes, theater is a wonderful way to play those roles and to change. In my play, I play all the roles. I play myself, I play my torturer, I play my mom, I play, the soldier, and it gives me a lot of freedom. It makes me become again the author of my life. I now own my life, and I can tell the story, and I have a great joy, while all people feel like, oh my God, what happened? And that's why I developed a process to process the play, because I didn't want people to stay in the shock.
Yes, that's so beautiful, and there's so much that you do, and I do recommend to people that resonate with what you're sharing to go online and to check. There's a lot of Hector's talks online that I think that go a little bit deeper in some of these topics, because of course we cannot talk for hours and hours here. And just because, Hector, I want to honor your time as well, I want to ask you just one last question, and it might be easy answer, or it might be actually quite complicated, but what is the one thing that you wish everybody knew?
Themselves. I tell people, read all the books that you can, but please do not miss reading the book of your life. Look at what has happened to you. And I know I did 2 careers, and wonderful careers in wonderful universities. I was never told that my life was important. Never. And I was trying to always understand Freud and Lacan and Marx and whoever, but yeah, look at your life, because whatever it is that you can give the world, it is in your woundedness, and it is in your giftedness. And the medicine that we all have to give the world is in ourselves, is in the way we have been able to resignify our lives and to heal the wounds that we all carry. Because if you are alive, you're wounded. There's no other way, But then, I guess, and also that the fact, as we said from the very beginning of this conversation, that we are nature. We're not separated from nature. We are not at the center. So this anthropocentric view needs to be transformed into a more biocentric, ecocentric. So we know that what happens to, and the pandemic has been a great teacher in that way, that what affects you affects me, what affects us affects the animals and all other beings. so that finally we start regenerating, reconnecting, and hopefully it will come the moment for this being we call humans to flourish. We're the only being that has not flourished yet. And yes, probably maybe we are the latest expression of evolution. I hope so, but we still need to evolve in a way. And that's the beautiful thing about this moment, is that this moment, everything that we see, economy, the education, everything has to transform radically, because the way we're living is unsustainable, is destructive, and is going to get us destroyed. I hope not, because we all want the children of the future to come. So what to know that all of our actions have repercussions in 7 generations. The Native Americans have been telling this to us, and now is more and more clear every day.
So beautiful, so beautiful. Thank you so much, Hector, for this conversation and this time, and once again for the work that you're doing. It's so important to be able to bring all of this wisdom and all of this work into the world, especially as you're saying, in a time like now that even though there's so many challenges, there's so many opportunities for creating this change. So thank you so much, Hector, and thank you everyone listening. And as always, if anything resonated with you and anything was of interest, please leave us a comment wherever you find this episode. And we would love for that, because this is how we all connect. Thank you, Hector, once more. We'll see you all in the next episode.
Okay.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ, so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.